Anyone who believes in indefinite growth on a physically finite planet is either mad or an economist.
We don't want to focus politics on a notion that involves the rejection of principles around which a large majority of our fellow citizens organize their lives.
We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think.
At Legacy Trust UK, children and young people were an important part of our mission to create a lasting sporting, cultural and educational legacy from London 2012 across the UK. Each of our programmes involved young people in some capacity, and indeed many of them made engaging young people their overarching objective. It is for this reason that we wanted to ask the central question, have we inspired a generation? What we found goes way beyond interesting statistics. It showed that young people were genuinely inspired, keen to share their opinions, and are looking to take action. The challenge lies in how they are supported to take those next steps. And young people, like the nation as a whole, were impressed by just how good the games actually were. For young people, the experience of last summer was seen to be about more than just sport, and reflected our vision too, to use the games to unite sports, culture and education. It demonstrated that they saw the games as representing a striving for excellence and that success in any field should be celebrated. This raises questions about how we invest in and nurture the talents and leadership in young people across both cultural and sports sectors equally and collaboratively. The Paralympics had a profound impact on young people. It lifted their aspirations and willingness to achieve, and most importantly, shifted attitudes. 70% of young people surveyed said they felt inspired by the Paralympians and saw them as role models, with over 65% of young people thinking there was a positive change in attitudes in the UK as a result of the Paralympics. We found that 73% of respondents who were involved in London 2012 projects have gone on to participate in another programme, and that 78% felt more confident as a result of their participation. This continued engagement is vital to ensure that young people can get long-term benefits from the legacy of the Games. One key area, which is currently a source of great debate in the legacy, is volunteering. We are pleased to see that 73% of young people who got involved in any activity, not just ours, are interested in volunteering for a local organisation as a result of the Games. The programmes we have supported demonstrate how a positive experience sets young people on a journey, often creating a lasting difference for those involved. But they were concerned too. They were worried that the positive aspects of pride, unity, achievement and inspiration would fade quickly, and the opportunities that they had experienced for the first time on a national scale would disappear. Young people have seen what is possible, and as one young person said, we can't go back to how it was before, to the pre-Olympics era. We know that there are plenty of partners wishing to build on their programmes related to the Games, and we know that there will be some key projects rolling out over the coming months and years. But we want people to continue to think big about what young people can do and seek to find some connectivity between different initiatives to create a substantial offer to our youth. There is an inspired army of young people that wants to act on what they have seen, heard, and been involved in. We say that we need to act quickly to find them, inspire them, and keep them involved. Whether it is in the arts, sports, or technology, we need to consider how we invest in skills and encourage young people to lead. How do we mobilise public resources to help young people develop? There will be some landmark sporting and cultural events in the next few years. Let's think of ways we could engage with these to keep some of this passion alive. We need to continue to capitalise on the good work achieved through 2012, to capture and maximise the enthusiasm it created among young people, to continue to use both art and sport to engage and connect with our youth, and ensure that the legacy we all want is delivered. Thank you very much.
Moira said the Games were more than just about competitive sport. So if you look back at the last 4 years, the build-up to the Games themselves, what do you think had the most important impact for young people? Matilda?
Well, the projects that I was involved in weren't particularly connected to the sport of the Olympic Games. They were all cultural projects in the North East. My project was a circus project, and I think we just got so many opportunities out of the funding that we'd got from the Legacy Trust UK that it just opened so many doors for everybody who was involved.
Tanny, what do you think?
I saw a young girl, 5 years old, double-leg amputee, who'd had meningitis, and started talking to her. And her mum had said until the Paralympics, she'd been happier to be pushed around in a pram, and she was happier to be thought of as being a baby rather than being disabled, because at 5 she recognised she was being discriminated against. And that was a real eye-opening moment. And it was the Thursday night, it was when Johnny Peacock won the 100, and she'd walked out of the stadium, and her mum said it was the first time she'd walked really on her prosthetic legs. And for me, it's those moments that you just think, wow, you just capturing that is incredible. And I think it gave people the chance to think, it's okay to try, it's okay to do something different, and it's okay just to, put yourself forward. There'll never be anything quite like the Olympics and Paralympics, but that's okay, because there's lots of other amazing things we can do without the Games.
And Matthew, from your perspective, very much focused on the arts, what do you think had the most important impact for young people?
Well, actually, running a think tank, I kind of have to have big ideas. And fortunately, the Olympics kind of reinforced a big idea I already had. And that was that if we think about what it is that makes things happen in society, fundamentally it's 3 different forces. It's leadership, organisation, it's individual endeavour and ambition, and it's solidarity, it's communities coming together. And I think what rarely happens is all those 3 things connect, so that we see organisation working, leadership working, hierarchies working. We often think we can't organise anything in this country. Individual endeavour, which is of course absolutely at the heart of the Games, but also, as we thought, particularly through the volunteers, but also the kind of feeling that Tanny is describing, that kind of sense of solidarity that came forward. So what I found interesting in the research is how often young people said that the power of the Games was the way it made them feel about their country. And so I think it was that sense that we are able to do stuff together if we can combine the different sources of power we've got. That was one of the most interesting parts of the legacy, I thought.
For me, that was, I think, unique about the Games, is the way that it brought different bodies together, perhaps in a way that nothing had done so before. And I guess part of the challenge is, how do you recreate that for something which isn't the Olympics?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's precisely about recognising how those things have to go together. I was working in number 10 when the Olympic bid was won. And something very interesting about this, generally speaking, we don't allow people who we elect into office or have authority to do stuff. We kind of don't, whether it's high-speed rail links or goodness knows what else, we have objections, and there's the media organised campaigns against it. There's a kind of cynicism. Because the Olympics had to be done. It just had to be done. So whatever people's objections were, listen, this is going to happen. It's going to happen in front of the world. We've got to get on with it. And so one of the interesting things really there was, if you do sometimes trust people in authority and say, OK, we've given you a mandate, get on with it. We might not like everything you do, but we understand you've got to do it. It does actually have a powerful impact. So I don't know how on earth we recreate that, because we seem to have got back into our attitude that everyone in authority is in it for themselves and useless.
We'll come back to that. Steve, you're working with young people day in, day out. Your perception on this?
For me, the most powerful thing was young Londoners understanding their city in a new way and actually welcoming the world. We would literally see people in Stratford shopping centre, not Westfield, Romanian teams, Senegal teams, and the idea of actually these were real people, ordinary heroes in our world. And that whole thing about actually how young people can play a part in welcoming and being an active part of their city. I think the other thing that I thought was exciting about the whole thing was it got the cultural sector to collaborate in a new way. And that's difficult for the cultural sector and arts sector. But actually thinking beyond your own organisation, actually putting young people at the centre and giving young people permission to actually co-produce, co-create and plan.
Moira, coming to you, you funded a whole range of projects this last 4 years, some of them sport, lots of them not. What do you think had the most impact?
I think we went out of our way to ensure that the programmes that we funded offered the young people the chance to not just get engaged and participate, as you say, and collaborate, but to actually lead on the creation of the work that they were leading on, be it in sport or culture. And they don't want to lose that. They grasped it, they loved it, and they want to do more of it.
This idea about young people in leadership, they believe, the report suggests, they should have more responsibility. How does the panel think this can be achieved? Because it's often one of the things which I think is talked about, but it's harder to put into practice. And I think Tanny would probably agree with me here. They talk about athlete involvement in putting on major sporting events, and often it's a token involvement, whereas I think with London 2012 it was a very real involvement. We both sat on the athletes committee. So perhaps start with you, young people in real positions of leadership.
It's so important to try, and actually I think it's too easy sometimes to talk about giving young people a voice and then just be a bit scared of them. In terms of if they do something that's completely radical and it doesn't fit within our whole monitoring and evaluation and our love of, in Britain, of filling reports and ticking boxes. I think it's so important because also, you know, the world's changing, it's moving on. You know, technology, I think, is massively important. You know, I'm in my 40s, but, you know, I'm actually almost like 5 generations away from what young people are doing now in terms of their lives and the opportunities and the things they have to do. And I think one of the things that happened last year was portrayal of young people was different, because a lot of portrayal of young people in the media is about them being hoodies, and, you know, if you took a cross-section of media reports, you think all they would do is, you know, on the streets beating up old people. And actually, I think it's giving young people a chance to do something different and a chance for them to create their own destiny, not what we think their destiny is. But it is difficult, actually, to give young people the confidence and the time and the skills. And that's what I hope, you know, that we've learned from the games experience, is to say, do you know what, it's okay to give people a chance. And, you know, I've got an 11-year-old. I want to protect my 11-year-old. I want to make life perfect for her, and I wanted to not make the same mistakes that I made. But actually, the best thing I can do for her is stand back and just let her do it herself. And that's what we've got. We've got to have the confidence in the amazing young people we have, just to say, do you know what, if you mess it up, it's all right. And, you know, we can't make everything perfect.
Matilda, what do you think?
Well, we developed a charter as part of End Generation, and it's like to help cultural organisations engage young people, not just in the way that they're participants, but so they're actually involved with the processes, the decision-making processes, how projects are run, all sorts of things like that. It's about valuing young people as practitioners in their own right, and that they're able to create something that's just as good as anybody else was. And when organisations are able to realise that, then that's when we can start to lead our own projects and be like more recognised in the cultural sector.
So you talked about your charter,
yeah,
up in the northeast.
Yeah.
How's it received?
Well, we've done pilots with about 3 different projects, and generally it was really positive. The only one criticism we had is that some people didn't believe that we'd written what we had written. And for us, that was, we just didn't understand, because we had written it. We'd spent lots of time and effort into producing something that we were really proud of. And for an organisation to come and say, well, you didn't write that, young people couldn't possibly create something like that, that really like hit us quite hard.
Steve, how does it work in what you're doing?
I think the key is about trust, and I think the idea of taking risk is silly, to be honest, because I think we had a number of opportunities. We took a group of young people to Beijing, 12 dancers. We raised some money, took them out there to meet some young dancers as part of the opening ceremony, and that exchange was transformative for those young people. I think what we've got to see is that it's a platform. It's not that it all happened around the Olympics. It's actually, we are very good at involving young people in this country in vehicles, on boards, looking at how they can contribute to their school, their learning, their education. And actually, we've just got to do more of it. That's what we've got to do.
And Matthew, what's it like here? Is it something that you've looked at very much at the RSA, a very august, a very serious body?
Yeah, it is. And one way we've done that is that we have a family of academy schools. And in one of those schools, for example, in the Midlands, there was an issue around bullying, and the decision they made was to, for the pupils themselves to be the people in charge of addressing that issue. And so it was the pupil council that took responsibility for it, and they tried to intervene. And as a consequence of that, what this was not about responding to things adults were saying, but it was about changing the norms amongst young people themselves. And as a consequence, bullying just stopped in the school because it was young people who were taking the responsibility and intervening in the ways which most effectively worked. Now, there were, of course, teachers, adults involved in shaping that and supporting that, but fundamentally it was an example, really powerful example of young people's leadership.
And more in the projects you funded, and we've heard a little bit just now about the role the young people had. Was that very much part of the kind of the sort of direction you took for giving funding, that young people were at the heart of the organisations?
Absolutely. One of the things that we looked at was long-term investment. We were fortunate that we were set up 3 or 4 years before the Games actually came. We were able to invest in projects and take a certain amount of risk, which was to allow these young people to challenge, to come up with ideas. Maybe they weren't quite right, maybe they needed to be reviewed, but we let them have the freedom to come back to us and say, you know what, we thought we'd be able to do this by now. We haven't been able to do it, but we know we will be able to do it if you let us carry on to next year. And so we took that kind of risk-averse, slightly, if you like, role as a funder. And I think other funders need to think about how they work with young people and fund their work and allow them that kind of room for manoeuvre, so that Matilda says, you know, that people understand young people can actually deliver what they say. They just might need a little bit more support to get there.
Do you think, Matthew, perhaps that the success of 2012 was partly a commentary on how disconnected we do feel and have felt?
Yeah, I think that it showed what happens when you bring together different kind of ways of making change happen in society. I also think the other thing is this. The last time I looked at the statistics, the North East had the highest level proportion of people who watch sport and the lowest proportion of people who participate in sport. And I think that the point there is that there is a fundamental difference between spectatorship and participation. And I think a challenge for the arts sector and a challenge for the sports sector is that emphasis on participation. And to introduce a kind of slightly critical element to this, I still think there are a huge variety of sporting organisations, I think of football clubs, for example, which have this very intense relationship with people as spectators and as consumers. And I don't think they lever those relationships nearly as much as they could to generate participation and civic association and social mixing. So we have to see spectatorship as a step to the ultimate goal, which is participation and leadership.
This research is obviously very, very rosy, very positive, but was there a bubble effect? And for a lot of people, they didn't really feel connected to 2012. It's one of the questions, some people wanted more involvement, they didn't know what was going on.
I think that there was an opportunity missed, and that opportunity was missed because so many people were worried that things were going to go wrong. So, you know, whether it was that, you know, the planning had failed or that there would be some kind of terrorist attack or just that the British team wouldn't do terribly well, there was a hesitancy, and therefore, in a way, if you really wanted to brand something, you brand it ahead of time, and then the event, it proves the assertion that you've made. Now, the assertion was not made ahead of time. So actually, what has been achieved in spite of the fact that we didn't really lay the foundations, because if we'd been truly, I think if we could go back 2 years, we'd have said, this is what these Olympics represent, and then when it happened, it would have been that story occurring. That's not what happened. So we've got to kind of retrofit it. Now, I think there is a kind of choice here. Do we say this is about more kind of big special events? Or do we say, which is the argument I think we should make, which is that it's about recognising that young people's participation and leadership needs to be mainstreamed across society in everything that we do. What is changing in the labour market? I heard someone say a few weeks ago, a wonderful point. They said we shouldn't be preparing young people for jobs which exist. We should be preparing young people to create jobs. That's the skill that they need in the future. RSA research shows more young people want to be entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs than ever before, because young people have got this desire, not to join, but to start.
And I'm just going to give the opportunity to the panel to perhaps just have a quick 30-second summing up final comments before we close?
I think just actually the fact that so many people are bothered and have come here today shows that everything we talk about legacy of 2012 is not dead. And kind of one message, you know, I've said it before, go out, everybody can do something different to make sure that we move on from this and we give young people a chance to do the things that they want to do, not the things that we think they should do.
I heard the other day something which I think is the start of a revolution, and it is that some of the largest technology companies are now employing people not because they've got computer science degrees or qualifications, but because they've done programming, because they've actually created something themselves. And I think that is the beginning of a revolution, and I think over the next few generations we'll get to the point where young people are expected to use education to achieve things concretely, not simply to gain knowledge. And I think that's what I keep coming back to in this Olympic experience is a recognition of providing young people with leadership and organisational opportunities as a mainstream part of what they do. And for me, that would be the greatest legacy of all, if we understood that, and we understood that in all parts of society.
Well, I think just the fact that I'm sat here pretty much sums it up. Like, I'm on a panel with all of these people, and my opinions are being equally listened to as everyone else's are, and there's young people in the audience whose opinions are also being listened to, and I think that's the most important thing I can take from it.
For me, it's about memory. I think we need to work with our collective memory, we need to learn from it, and I don't think we're very good at that in this country. I think actually we need to go back to be able to go forward, and actually, you know, I will never forget, I was in the stadium for the Paralympics, the roar for 40 minutes when the Paralympic team came out for GB. That was extraordinary, and those kind of things we must never, ever forget.
I would just like to thank everyone for coming today, and as Matilda said, it's so exciting to have a young person up here and young people here and having a platform to, on their behalf, share with you their thoughts about how they feel about London 2012, and more importantly, their thoughts about what they would like to see happen next. And I think the level of debate here and some of the ideas that have come out of it have been tremendous. I would be remiss of me not to say thank you firstly also for Nielsen, who conducted all this research on our behalf, and also our evaluation team, which was led by Janice Needham, who is here today. And of course the RSA for hosting and partnering us in this event. Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming.